Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Well, the places that my camera has taken me, I guess I can notch off a nuclear submarine now off the list. And it's, as I've mentioned before in these videos, that this right here can be a key to places that you would never imagine going, and it's just, it never ceases to really amaze me where this thing right here has taken me. And let me say too, for those of you who might be new here to my little YouTube channel, that I'm a photographer first, and I like to say I'm a photographer with a YouTube channel and not a YouTuber, I guess, pretending to be a photographer. So the work you see here, the work that you see on my channel, this is all basically what I do for a living. And then I'm on YouTube to, I guess, give back. Photography's given me so much over the years that I've been inspired to come on here and create these videos for y'all to hopefully, I guess, share some knowledge that I've learned through the years, through these amazing photo shoots. So if you are new here and you like this type of content, hit that little subscribe button down there and you know, join the party, because there's going to be more to come. But let's my overall thoughts, or my thoughts for this video, I figured we would just kind of talk through this photo shoot, you know, everything that I was facing. Once again, this was typical of these Naval Academy photo shoots, where we have these, you know, high standards, these ambitious, creative goals that we've set. And I did a whole video a couple weeks back that I'll link up here about previous shoots, and this one lived up to all those similar challenges to the shoots in the past, if not more so on this one. But along with talking through this photo shoot, I figured we would jump on the computer, run through a couple of images, and I'll show you how I took them from what I captured in camera to what you might have seen around and about these higher profile jobs like this one here. They're a lot of fun when you have networks like CBS picking them up. You've got some of the other folks that were involved, like the designers from Under Armour and Under Armour themselves, you know, putting them out, the US Navy. It's just, it's a lot of fun to see it kind of get out there and see people's reaction to this work. So let's just get into it here. This photo shoot took place at the Naval Submarine Base up in Connecticut. And I'd have to say, I guess from my point of view, this was some of the tightest security that we've been, I guess, exposed to during one of these photo shoots. I believe the Pentagon had to clear like us to be able to go on and actually conduct this photo shoot. And then when we got there, it was apparent that obviously they didn't want us to film a lot of places on the sub. And then we had some officers with us just kind of make sure that we knew what we could film, what we couldn't film. We couldn't take our phones on board. Fortunately, a couple of folks were cleared to have their phones with them. One of them, Eric from the Naval Academy, who was able to capture basically everything you see behind the scenes in this video. So thank you, Eric, for doing that for me and for us, so that we can all see this behind the scenes footage now in this video. And then we also had to basically show everything we captured on our cameras, video and still, before they would let us off the boat and off the base. But that just goes to show what all is involved with what the US Navy does to defend our country here, and just having the privilege to produce work like this that represents their academy, represents the US Navy to a certain extent. It's really an honor. So it's just hard to believe that I get to take part in something like this. So that was just something that we had to kind of just roll along with, and I'm happy to do so, just knowing the bigger picture out there. Okay, so let's talk about the location. I mean, we're inside of this submarine. As you can see from some of this behind the scenes video, there was not much room to get around. You can see when our player's in his gear, in some of those areas, in like the torpedo room, his shoulders are almost touching, you know, the sides of basically torpedoes that we're in there with, which is just insane. But that was something we were just gonna have to overcome. And fortunately, on these projects, basically, I think, yeah, every single one of these projects I've been paired with an amazing videographer, director, Matt, he knows who I'm talking about. And it's one of those things where we kind of went down and did a maybe a 30-minute scout, talked about things, and he had pre-planned. I had pre-planned as well. And I knew after walking through there that I was going to be reliant on his lights during this shoot. There was no room to set up stands, set up strobes, or I would have to have, someone maybe hand hold a strobe, which I probably could have done maybe with the 200s. But we're pressed for time during these shoots, and he's got to capture his content, and I know I've got to capture my content. So I've got to be confident in knowing that I can use his lighting, and that goes along with obviously us having a relationship too, where just basically respect what he sets up for his videos. If there's something that I feel like needs to be changed, he's cool with that when I start shooting the stills, and then vice versa. And it can work both ways, where he sets something up and it looks better or different than I would have thought, and then I use my camera here and I'm able to capture some really cool stuff that way. And then I think, vice versa, when, we might switch the lights up based off of what I'm seeing here in my camera, then, a lot of times then he would kind of jump back in and capture some footage with how we might have rearranged the lighting somewhat. But it's so much fun to work with talented folks like that. And that is just one of the, the greatest joys of this job, is collaborating on a project like this and coming out with content like we came out with for this launch for this uniform. But let's talk about the lighting. So he rented some Aputure lights. I'm going to link them down below. They're RGB, like 1 foot lights that have magnets on them. And being in a submarine, there's a lot of metal around. So those magnets really played a key part in what we were able to do, because we could stick them, all around. We could change the colors of them to kind of create these scenes. For video, he was able to, have them flashing, that type of thing. Obviously that doesn't really work for the stills. Well, I mean, it works fine, but I was having to time some of my shots to where that, I was catching the stills during the pulse there. Although it did get some pretty cool kind of backlit stuff when I was in between those pulses during that kind of setup. And it's, once again, it's all kind of seeing what I'm capturing in camera, rolling with it, getting feedback from our creative director, Mike, and, continuing on. But we were able to position those lights. We had a couple of tubes as well. I had brought some Nan lights that we didn't actually end up using. We just stuck with those Aputures. We also, with those colored lights, it was great to have one kind of daylight balanced light that we used, and that was a Hobolite, which I'd never used before. Just a little small compact light, and we used that in several instances, maybe like a backlight. And you might have seen, well, hopefully you'll see it here, the pictures of the helmets in the actual torpedo tubes, and we used that light to kind of light the front side of that so we could have the colors fairly correct on those helmets. And then we used one of those Aputure lights behind that to kind of give a glow into a torpedo tube, which is actually where they load the torpedoes before they send them out the front of the submarine. So I'm showing some of this behind the scenes type stuff so you can kind of see what all was going on. It was really neat to work with the different color combinations. One thing that I did notice as we were kind of moving along is when we had all the RGB lights set to one color, it gave a neat effect, but I knew that it might have been good for maybe 1-2 setups, because you kind of lose the contrast that you might have when you're working in multiple colors. And so most of the time, for the still stuff, I was wanting to have maybe blues and reds and then some daylight mixed in those, so I'd have a combination of colors to put together for some of the still images. All right, so what did I use to capture all these? So I used my trusty Canon R5, and along with the R5, because we were in such a tight space, I was using the 15-35 for most everything on or inside of the sub, I should say. And this 15-35 is the 2.8 version, which basically stayed at 2.8 the entire shoot. The lighting, despite the fact that we had those RGB lights around and all, it was very limited. It's a lower lighting than we would use, with some higher watt lights or strobes. that's what forced me to stay at 2.8. And then to further compensate, I was adjusting my ISO up and down, probably from, we'll look through the files here, like around 1250 to 2000 ISO. And then my shutter speed would go, I think I went as low as 100th, and then maybe as high as 200th, just kind of based on what we were doing. And that goes to just these cameras these days, and it's just not just the Canon. This guy worked great here, but you know, if you've got the Sony, you know, any of these newer Sonys with the IBIS systems in them, that's where we can get away with those slower shutter speeds. And then the noise performance that these sensors have on them. It really goes to show when you look at these images, when I'm shooting out to 2000 ISO, and you really don't even notice the noise. And I'm not running any noise reduction in post on those. And so it does go to show that technology, it's a good thing to keep up with, you know, what's going on out there, and not to handicap yourself if possible. If you can afford these newer camera bodies, I would, for jobs like this where you're going to be put into a stressful situation where it's going to push your gear to the limit, it's well worth it to either, you know, rent something or, you know, pick something up that's on the newer end of these cameras if you're going to be you know, put in charge of capturing images for campaigns like this. And so our shoot was kind of set in 3 stages, I would say. So we started on the inside of the sub and got all the content that we needed to get there. And then we moved to the top side, and you'll see some of the behind the scenes video where we got our player kind of coming out of the portal there. Use, again, color lighting. We use some of the smoke, the atmosphere aerosol cans to kind of give a little more of an environment type feel, a little more depth going on, a little more drama. As if we needed that with a submarine as our backdrop. And then after we finished on the top side of the sub, then we moved to it's kind of a studio lighting setup. And I'll be honest, that was probably hour 11 on like a 13-hour day, and we had to climb flights of stairs to kind of get where we could set up that setup. And that's where we captured some of the sideline merch and some of these other helmet shots that you'll see that I actually converted to underwater looking images, but I didn't capture any behind the scenes there. It was just too late in the day, and we were just trying to all kind of get everything in the can and wrap out of there so we could actually get somewhere before everywhere was closed for dinner. And that was kind of how we wrapped the day. And I thought what we would do here on this video is maybe jump into the computer, and I can show you where I've taken these images, what I captured in camera, and was able to kind of take them to the next level with some retouching that I did. And in recent years, it's kind of a goal of mine to get it in camera. I just feel like that's a skill that you know, a lot of people have kind of given up on, to where, you know, they want to use the computer, just kind of take pictures of something and then retouch the heck out of it in Photoshop. But in a situation like this, we have a lot going on, a lot of kind of lighting, a lot of our setups where I'm working with a player in a dark uniform. Some of the setups, there's a lot going on behind them. It can be distracting in these compositions. And that's where I would take the images from here, place them in the computer, and try to mold these to where I can direct the viewer's eye to what I want them to look at. And so let's jump on here, and I will show you some examples of how I do just that. And then we'll also look at the ones, so I converted a couple of the helmet shots. These helmets are, you know, really works of art, and we did some really cool stuff with them in the actual torpedo tubes, which is still insane to me. We had Hannah, who was with us. She climbed up in there and set them up in the tube, and which is kind of neat too. They, I guess if you're crazy enough to climb up in those tubes, they'll give you a pen. You can go in and sign your name in the tube. So she did that. But anyway, we took some pictures there, and then we did some in the studio setup, and I wanted to maybe, you know, try taking them to where they look like they were underwater, and I will show you how I did that as well here on the computer. So let's jump over here, and I'll show you what I did. All right, let me hit record. And I wanted to show, first off, I know when I mentioned that when we had all the same color on these lights up here, you can see the lights where they are. And there's some, obviously you can see in the reflections of the helmet where we had some closer. But this was when they were all set to a red color. And it makes for a neat image, especially on a submarine. But then it is somewhat flat in a sense, and so that's kind of where once I captured a couple of these, I wanted to add other color into these types of images that gave us a little bit more going on. But I wanted to show this from the onset just to give y'all a visual sense of what I was talking about. But let's move to, so this is one here where you can see we got multiple colors going on, and we got the blues and the reds and a little bit of the normal like white balanced color. And you can see here where this says ordnance installed down here, which is pretty cool. But when I wanted to just run you through like an image like this one I just pulled. So I had my player acting like he was running between the torpedoes here. But you can see there's some things that are distracting in this frame and just stuff that we couldn't move when we were down there. And it's just, you know, we have to kind of go and shoot as is in these types of locations. But this is where, and I'm going to talk about AI a good bit in this discussion here. Things are really changing on this front. I've made a couple videos about using Midjourney, combining it with your photography, and then this is where like the generative fill comes into play. We'll use both of them coming up in an example I've got in a few minutes. But this one, let's just look at what generative fill does for us and something like this. I wish it was easier to say, but it is. It is what it is, and I'll take it because it is amazing. So you can kind of see some of these elements that don't look all that great, and it's just, it clutters up what we've got going on here. And so right here, generative fill, I created a layer, and you can see it gave me 3 different options here. I went with the first option. I mean, it's incredible what this stuff does. This back here was bugging me. This plastic, something wrapped in plastic back here. So once again, I used the generative fill there. Let me get this little box out of the way. So you can kind of see, it gave me a couple options back there in the back. I wanted it super clean, so I took this second option. I only had to do like one set, you know, one generative fill type of layer there. And it's just a matter of creating a selection around what I've got going back here, and then just letting Photoshop generate what it generates. Sometimes I'll put a prompt in there, but a lot of these is very intuitive, and it will just sense, I guess, what it is that you're trying to do, and it did a great job here. And then here's one, I think this little area with that fill layer, I had to come in and kind of clean up right around the mask area there. Here's a curves adjustment that I threw in. Let me get on here, you can see what I'm doing here. So basically I just applied that curves adjustment. You can see the curve right here. Get to my pointer. So you can see the curve right there, and basically masked out everywhere but the front of my player. So we're giving just a little bit more light to the front of what's going on. And then right here, I added just a little bit more to his reflective face mask. And then this layer right here, this is a tool, I'm not sure how many people make use of this. So this is a multiply layer. So what I've done is I've combined everything up to this point onto this layer, converted it to the blending mode multiply. And what that does is darkens everything. I like to bring it into like a 50% opacity. And then what that does, let me turn off the mask. You can see, you know, it darkens basically everything in here. Let me click it off and then back on. And this is where, when we're in a situation where I can't put the lights exactly where I want them to be, but then my camera is giving me the information on this sensor, I can then, in Photoshop, I can drop a darker layer over the top of my exposure, which is exactly what I'm doing here with this multiply layer. I'm darkening everything down, and then I can come back in and I can paint where I want the light to come in. So this is where basically I'm wanting the light to show up on my player right in here. So I'm bringing him, I'm putting like a dark blanket over everything, and then I'm painting away that darkness on my player right here. So what that does is isolates him a little bit more, takes away some of the distracting details. I mean, all these details are really cool, but I don't want them to be the first thing you see when you look at these images. I want you to see the player first, and then kind of look around and see what's going on. Obviously this is brighter than the player, so you know your eye is going to naturally kind of go to this, but in some way it kind of leads you down into what's going on here, and then you know I can adjust with a crop if I need to. Right here I'm kind of bringing back a little bit more light, just in a general sense. And then here I'm adding a little bit of sharpening with a high pass filter, and you can see where I've applied this sharpening. I don't want to apply it to too many of these knobs kind of up in this area of the frame, because then that becomes distracting once again. But I did add them kind of in here, and then painted in my player, so he's going to benefit from some of this sharpening. And I'll zoom in, you can kind of see it gives it just a little bit more of a pop on the contrast of these layers here. So that's kind of basically, you know, where I started with that image. Let me group these together and we do it real quick. So you can see this is where I started with this image, and then that's where I ended up. Makes a huge difference to what's going on here and where your eyes are drawn. All right, let's go to this next one here. And this is probably the marquee image from this campaign. We got a little bit of everything going on here. You can see a lot of the uniform, a lot of the details, the shoulder patches, some of the helmet. Got the American flag, Navy, Under Armour, some of the logoing down here. And I knew that, you know, just this composition, I knew when we got here and got set, got the lights going. I like the reflection here on the mask. I knew that this was something that was, you know, was happening visually in the camera. So this is where I took this to kind of the next level here. And the first thing I did, once again, is I used a multiply layer. And I kept this one at 100% because there's just a lot going on back in these corners. This is our Hobolite back here, kind of giving us a little bit of regular uncolored light coming through. And we got the blue here, we got the red over here. But I wanted to, once again, I wanted the player to be what you see first. And that's basically what I've done with this layer. Let me show you what I've done with the mask here. So I masked out everything in red here is where I painted out. But I left the multiply layer on his mask to kind of give us that mysterious kind of dark look, because you can see his face before that happened. So I've got that there. And then what I do is I've combined all to this layer, because I'm going back into the generative fill once again. And I use this, you can see, so we have Navy likes to put sleeves on their athletes for these shoots, and we try to cover up, you know, if the sleeve gets pulled. Generative fill, you know, I used to have to clone stamp. I would probably, in the old days, which mean a couple months ago, I would have had to maybe duplicate or taken a selection of the sleeve, moved it over, blended it in. Right here, I just did a generative fill real quick, and it was instantly taken care of. My next generative fill layer was up here at the top. I was a little tight on my framing and camera. Originally, you can see I was clipping just the top of his helmet, so I extended the canvas and then used another generative fill layer. And you can see I had three options here, and I chose the middle option to go with here. I would have, I'm not even sure how I would have had to have tackled that in the past, but it's just an amazing tool, and that you need to be on top of, because I use the heck out of this to deliver these images, and it's something obviously brand new to what we have going on these days. And I think I actually, so it looks like I did two different sets of generative fills there. And then what I did is I used a curve layer to kind of bring down that the light on that generative fill to kind of keep everything consistent with everything to keep the viewer's eye exactly where I want it to go. This next layer is, once again, it's another high pass layer to give a little bit of sharpening to these areas here, which give them more of a punch when you see them on there. You can see, let me zoom in, come down here, let me turn those on and off. I mean, this patch right here is just really, right here is just amazing. And then when you hit it with the high pass, and it'll make it, just give it that little bit of a pop. But I don't want these areas to pop here, so that's why I've masked out all that, and then I painted in exactly where I wanted that sharpening to be. And that's what you can see with the red mask here. It shows exactly where I'm painting in those areas. So being very deliberate on where I'm wanting the light, where I'm wanting the sharpening, and how all that comes together to elevate these images from, you know, what I had captured in camera when I was somewhat restricted by what was going on the location where we were, and then that's kind of, you can see where I started, and then here's where I ended. Fairly subtle, but very powerful, if you ask my opinion. So let's jump to the underwater type scene, and I will link one of these videos to Midjourney up here, and how powerful I think it is to create the backdrops. And that's exactly what I did here. I just created a underwater scene. I've already got it rotated and stuff to fit the composition that I'm looking for here. But this way you can kind of see what I generated out of Midjourney, and rotate it over there. And then here's where the combination of something like Midjourney and Photoshop's generative fill. So once I moved it over there, I needed to fill in these areas. And this is all Photoshop in conjunction with Midjourney. So I've got the AI program to create the foundation here, and then I'm using generative fill in Photoshop to further enhance what's going on. And here you can kind of see the different options that I had with Photoshop. And it's really neat to kind of work these in tandem. I would have probably had to go some stock site or something like that to find something like this in the past. And it probably took 2 rounds of generating stuff to find a prompt that would do what this did for me. And so basically then what I did is dress that out, darkened it down with a curves layer here to kind of give it that extra mood, elevate the drama to what's going on. And then I dropped my helmet in here. Let's turn off all these adjustments. There's a lot going on in this image to get it to where I wanted it. So here's, straight off of the setup. This is from the studio kind of setup we did late in the day, capturing, pictures of the helmets and other details off of the uniform. And so what I did is I took this image from that setup and then brought it into this backdrop to kind of give it this moody underwater type feel. We're talking about submarines here, so I thought it would be kind of neat to stick these underwater in a digital sense, and to create some unique images like this. And so here I am bringing down the whites on that, doing a color balance where I'm turning and getting rid of a lot of that magenta that was in there. So you can see I'm adding cyan, some blue, another curves adjustment here, bringing it down a little bit more. And once I've done that color grade, you can see that here. So then what I've done is I've gone in here and done a select color range. And so with that, then I come over here and what I wanted to do is select a white balance, or a white value in my image. So using the selection tool, and then it gives me, heck, let's just do it real quick. So you do the select color range, you can see right here what it's kind of set up default to do, but you can come over here and select different values of white. And what I was wanting was something off of our helmet, and you can change the fuzziness here, which will give you sometimes more. So you can see now I'm picking up this along with that. And so what I would do is just come in here, find a value that I was liking that gave me a little bit on the helmet and the uniform, something maybe along these lines. And then once you click OK, then it'll give you that selection. So then what I do is I create another layer here and fill it with white, blur that layer, and then come in here and mask in where I wanted those white values. So it gives you that glow. Underwater things kind of glow. They aren't as sharp as they are above water. And so what that does is gives you, a really neat kind of underwater glow, which I'll zoom in. You can kind of see what I'm talking about, like right here on this logo patch. I can add like little, dots of light on the uniform here on the background. And so that is kind of what I'm going with here. So it gives us that haloing right there. Further to sell the underwater type feel of this overall image. And so that was a pretty powerful layer right there. Once again, controlling the light in a digital sense in Photoshop. And then I just selected a kind of an underwater color here, and which is with like the color picker, filled the layer, set it to soft light, and then that kind of gives a color blanket. I'm using that word blanket today, but for whatever reason. But so then that kind of converts everything to this underwater kind of color. And then I actually added more of that into specific areas. You can kind of see where I've painted in certain areas to add more and more color. And then I've come in here with a bit of a soft high pass layer to add a little bit of sharpening to certain areas. You can kind of see, the edge of the sub right around here, some of the mask and stuff like that, to where, and then the logo patch over here. So being very deliberate, specific of where I'm adding sharpening. And then I've come in to brighten up the whole image. Sometimes when I work on these, they just tend to be a little too dark for what I need them to be. And so that's where I come back in here at the end and bring up the whole exposure. So we'll go back down to where we opened this image up, and you can see. I'll show you the original file there. But once we have, and then here's our helmet image, and that's right off the studio set. I've got that image there, and then boom, this is everything we just walked through, what that looks like at the end. And you can see it makes a pretty cool effect at the end of the day. Get out of that. So I hope that walking through this photo shoot, the front of this video, talking about everything we went through, showing some of these behind the scenes. I hope that this has been fun for you to watch, showing kind of how I elevated these images from the in-camera capture to to where you see them out there in the wild these days, or since this release has happened. Just everything that it takes to basically walk onto a submarine with my camera, with an amazing creative crew, and produce the images that you've seen from this release. So if you got any questions or comments, please drop those down below. Share this video with anyone you think might enjoy it. I'd love to get this type of work out so more people can see it out there. If you feel like it's worthy at the end of the day, please give me that thumbs up. If you want to see more content like this in the future, like I said earlier in the video, hit that subscribe and the little bell so YouTube will let you know when I'm here. In the meantime, find me over on social media, on Instagram mainly, at quantzphoto, and then I'm also over at the Pro Light Mods Instagram. Y'all stay safe and healthy out there, and I hope to see y'all again soon in the next one. Go Navy!